So how did you get to be doing what you're doing today?
It's something I never intended to do. I had no desire to become kind of an education advocate. About 16 years ago, our oldest daughter was in third grade in elementary school. And it was getting toward the end of the school year, about March, I think, of 2004. And I went to a parent-teacher conference, and I said to the teacher, hey, I noticed that our daughter hasn't been learning the times tables yet, and it's really close to the end of the school year. I remember doing that when I was in third grade, a long time ago. So when are you going to start doing that? And she said, oh, we don't do that anymore. And I went, what? She said, yeah, it's not part of the curriculum. And I said, well, how do you expect kids to learn their times tables if you're not going to teach them? And this is a 23-year veteran teacher, not some new teacher. And she looked at me and said, well, the smart kids will just pick it up as they go. That's exactly what she said. And I just oh my gosh, I can't believe I just heard that. And so I went down to the principal's office and, I was like, hey, what the heck's going on? And he said, calm down, Oak. I know it's not how you and I grew up, but all the studies say that this is the best way to teach math. And I was like,
by not teaching it?
By not teaching the times tables. And so I said, well, okay, you're the educators. What do I know? I'm an accountant. I know math is valuable. You do what you're going to do. I'm going to Walmart to buy flashcards because I was like, I can see the school's not going to take care of this.
Right.
And so a year went by, and I didn't say anything to the school. I didn't kind of make a fuss. I didn't really understand what they were doing, but my daughter was doing basically her school math, and we'd bought some supplemental math that she was doing at home. And I came home one day from work, and I saw my daughter sitting at the counter, and she had a piece of paper, and there were circles all over this piece of paper, and she was drawing lines down the paper. And I was like, what are you doing? And she said, long division. And I said, well, that looks long. What is this? And she goes, I'm supposed to do 120 divided by 30. So she had to draw 120 circles on a piece of paper and draw a line down between 30 circles to divide them into groups. And I was like, well, why aren't you doing it the way I showed you? Because I taught her how to do long division.
Right.
And she burst into tears and said, I'm not allowed to. That's kind of when my fuse got lit. And I started off going to she brought home a flyer for a school board meeting that was called The Role of Public Education in a Democracy. And I went, this is a meeting I should go to. Because I understood enough. I'd been actually, for some maybe probably inspired reason, about 20 years ago, I started studying the Constitution because I realized my own education was really deficient. And I knew enough that I knew it was Karl Marx that wanted free public education, which is what they were touting and what this is. And we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And so I showed up at this meeting and I was like, I'm not going to say anything about the math stuff. I don't get what they're doing. It ticks me off, but I'm not going to get involved. And I went and I stood up and I said some words about what I thought of their title and how we're a republic. And it was Karl Marx that wanted free public education. And probably everybody ought to ask themselves why. And, I knew I was going to offend some public educators by doing that. But I was like, nobody ever thinks about these things. And why did he want that? What was he trying to accomplish? And so at some point in the meeting, one of the parents raised their hand and said, hey, what about this math stuff you guys are doing? Didn't California do this in the 90s and then get away from it? And the assistant administrator for the school district, this is a huge school district, it's Alpine, and they have at the time, they had over 50,000 kids in the district. They're up near 80 now. And he said, oh, no, California started this, but they didn't do a full implementation. They never did it right. And so we're doing it right. And it had been implemented for about maybe 5 years at this point. And I was already seeing, in my own family, some issues, and I didn't know who else had concerns. So this was the first other parent that I'd really come across. And there were a couple parents that said, oh, we love this math. It's great. Our kids, it's so cool when the light bulb goes on. And I was like, wait, she hates it like I do, and these parents love it. What is going on? And so after the meeting, I went to one of the school board members who was there, and I said, you should do a survey and ask parents why there is such this dissension, why so many parents hate it, but then, some love it. Figure that out. And she goes, that's a really good idea.
What concept?
I was like, oh, you're just patronizing me. You're never going to do this. So the first thing I ever did getting involved was to do a survey. And I just started emailing it out to people that I knew. And I was like, will you take my survey? And including this school board member. I was like, is this fair, what I'm asking? And she said, yeah, I think those are fair questions. Turns out that 80% of the parents that I asked that responded hated the math program.
Wow.
And I thought, the school board just doesn't know. This is my first lesson in politics.
Yeah.
Showed up at a school board meeting. I said, hey, you guys probably just don't know, but 80% of the parents in the district don't like this math program. You guys should replace it. And there they all are up there, and they're like, thank you very much, Mr. Norton. We appreciate you coming. Next.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, what just happened? They didn't listen to me at all. They're not listening to parents. What is going on? And so I went home, and I was like, I had some issues in my job and things going on at the time that caused me to have some insomnia. And so I was just like up early in the morning every day, which has become kind of a pattern for my life now, I guess. But I was getting up, and I was like, what am I going to do with my time? And I was like, I'm going to look into this math stuff. And that's when I started doing research. And I found out not only was that assistant administrator wrong about California, he was dead wrong, the exact opposite. California put it in full speed, and they went from one of the top 3 states in the country for math to second lowest.
Wow.
It was just like a rock. And Pete Wilson was governor at the time, and he basically, it was getting toward the end of the 90s. I can't remember the year, maybe 97, something like that. And he was like, hey, state school board, you either fix this problem or I'm going to fix it with the legislature and bypass you. And so for the first time, instead of trusting the math educators to write standards and implement them, the mathematicians were called in. And this was the math war that happened during the 90s. And it was because of the 1989 National Council of Teachers of Mathematics standards that were horrible. And there's a lot that goes on in this time frame, but I basically was doing a lot of research, went to multiple, I was going to school board meetings all the time, just constantly harping like, look, here's the problems this is creating all over. California had this happen. Here's scores of the other schools. I mean, their actions gave rise to more charter schools in Alpine School District than any other place in the state, because parents were just fleeing the public schools. So that's kind of how I got started with the math.
Did it go anywhere? Were you able to make any changes? What did it take to do that?
Yeah. By 2006, so I'd been fighting this for a little more than a year, and I could see that my school district didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to listen to parents at all. I started a petition. I got represented on my petition 5% of the school district, the parents that have kids in the school district. So it was like, I don't know, a few thousand, people, and they weren't listening. And so I wrote a letter to every state legislator, and the state Senate president at the time was John Valentine. He said, hey, Howard Stevenson in Draper is your senator, and he wants to talk to you. So I called him up, and he said, well, I totally agree. This is nonsense. We need to do something. What should we do? And I said, well, number one, we need to raise the state standards, because the state standards are so low, it's allowing our school district to not teach the times tables or long division or division by fractions. And when you ask the school district, like, why aren't you doing this? The response was, well, kids will always have a calculator.
Yeah.
So like, oh, here's a poor kid that can't learn the times tables. They go to the store. Let's see, I need to buy 3 of these, and they're $8 each. I don't have enough fingers and toes. How am I going to do that math problem? It's just ridiculous.
Right.
And so Howard helped a lot. And so did Margaret Dayton, who was in the Senate at the time. They pulled in Patty Harrington, who at the time was the state superintendent. And we all said, we need new standards. Well, there were hearings up at the Capitol. And so I went up and was part of that. It was very eye-opening to be part of the process. And they brought in experts to testify. Utah's standards at the time were nationally rated a D, and by one source and a C- by another. And so everybody kind of acknowledged there's a problem, we need better standards. So 2007, we got new standards, and they were rated like an A- at the time, but the state office didn't like what was happening. So they kind of sabotaged this whole process by telling districts, here's the new standards, but we'll probably revise these in a couple years. We hear something else is coming out. So whether or not you implement these or not, it's up to you. So a lot of the districts never implemented the better standards. And then within a couple more years, we started hearing about Common Core. So Common Core, it's to the educators out there. They want to say, it's just some national standards. And they want to isolate it to national standards that parents like myself oppose, because then they can contain the argument and say, look, what's the big deal? It's just some standards. But it's not. It's like this big. It's not this big.
Right.
It's standards, it's assessments, it's database tracking of kids. It's morphed into revising all of the curriculum, because when you test something nationally, or you attach high stakes to a test, the teachers become very invested in it. And they're like, well, I've got to make sure that my kids perform on this, or I miss my merit pay, or I miss such and such. And so the testing for Common Core initially was done by two entities. One was PARCC, P-A-R-C-C, and the other was SBAC, which is Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. And in Utah, we adopted that, SBAC. SBAC, the lead author is a lady at Stanford named Linda Darling Hammond, who wrote a book called Teaching for Social Justice in the Classroom.
Oh boy.
And so you can immediately sense that, where are these questions going to go? Well, it took us, we started fighting this, the Common Core hit about 2010. And I'd been through a couple of battles. One was the math fight, and another was getting the word republic put back into our state history standards.
Were you successful in those battles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those we succeeded, but I could tell this Common Core thing was huge. I was like, in the past, there were very few people that really jumped in and helped a lot with the first two kind of battles. There were a couple of people that did a lot, and I really appreciated all that they did. But this one, I was like, I can't steer this. It is huge. And I could see this huge national wave was coming. And literally, I got down on my knees one morning and I was like, okay, God, if you want me to fight this, you've got to send help, because I know I can't do something like this myself for sure. And about 3 weeks later, I got an email or something, and somebody said, hey, Oak, did you see this video that was done by these ladies over in Heber City? And I was like, no, what is it? And I pulled it up, and here were some other people speaking out about Common Core, and I was like, I got to get in touch with them. And so they came in, and we started collaborating, and it just started to grow. And some fantastic people, some just top-notch people that came in, and we all just collaborated. And so I run the website utahnsagainstcommoncore.com, and provided a lot of articles there and stuff, and they did some of that contribution, and we were all just fighting these different battles because it was all over the place. Initially what the state and the feds wanted to say is, look, it's just math and English standards, and it was so much more than that.
Thanks so much for being here and watching that video. And can I ask you to please subscribe to our channel so you can find out when we're posting new content. You'll be alerted right away when we do. To share this with people you think might benefit from the information, and certainly it helps us if you like the video. So if you like what you just saw, go ahead and hit that like button. And again, thank you so much for being here with me right now.